It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago. In fact, it's the largest American jobs investment since World War II.
He's not playing. President Biden stacking himself up against some of the greatest and most expensive programs of all time there in Pittsburgh. And it's true. What he's trying to get passed right now after that big COVID relief bill would be historic, a multi-trillion-dollar jobs plan. The White House says this will address inequality, but also, at a general matter, help everyone, because it will rebuild America's infrastructure with jobs for all kinds of industries. Biden unveiling what's essentially the first half of the plan. Hundreds of billions for roads, manufacturing, as well as broadband. And he's going to pay for it by basically rolling back the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy, also upping corporate tax rates, something that's quite popular right now, ending other tax breaks for the oil industry. And he says he'll get more money out of actually enforcing the law by the IRS.
This plan is important, not only for what and how it builds, but it's also important to where we build. It includes everyone, regardless of your race or your zip code. Too often, economic growth and recovery is concentrated on the coast. Too often, investments have failed to meet the needs of marginalized communities left behind.
People can debate the price tag and whether this is a good idea or not. There's no debating the fact that it has indeed been many decades since there was this kind of major investment in our national infrastructure, and it shows.
Across the country, bridges crumbling, even collapsing. 54,259 bridges deemed structurally deficient. If placed end to end, they'd stretch nearly the distance between New York City and Miami. The driver of this car could have been killed when this piece of a bridge smashed through his windshield.
These are real needs in America. A lot of experts say you got to tackle it sooner or later. Republicans look skeptical in Congress, but they're increasingly at odds with their own constituents. This is a theme we've reported on before, but it keeps happening on different topics. New polling shows a majority of Americans are game to raise taxes on corporations to pay for this kind of jobs program. We're joined now by Jason Johnson from Morgan State University, an MSNBC analyst, and Che Komanduri, a Democratic strategist who's worked on the Obama and Clinton campaigns. Good day to both of you. Jason, I'm going to start with the big softball, because sometimes that's just how it is. Do you know how many times the last president talked about actually doing something on infrastructure? I'm going to put it up on the screen here. We had infrastructure weeks in June and August of his first year, February, both 18 and 19, April, May, January, February, March. The guy was a marketer, and the reason I bring this up, Jason, is Donald Trump may not have cared about doing anything actually on infrastructure, but he was good enough as a con man to know that infrastructure can be a popular issue. Your thoughts of that context for what the new president's laying out?
Yeah, all right. Everybody loves infrastructure because it's shovel-ready jobs, right? There's not a politician in America who doesn't want to stand near people with a hard hat on and a suit and some rolled-up sleeves and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're building. So symbolically and practically, it's great. The issue is whether or not Joe Biden can get such a big package through. Like, this is massive, right? If you look at Obama's stimulus in 2009, that was like $831 billion. What Biden's talking about now is $2 trillion. Like, this is a whole nother league, you know, shooting new baskets, paying new taxes. This is huge. He is trying to spend money that we haven't seen outside of wartime. If he is successful, he will be a transformative president.
I got to stop you.
But if he faces...
I got to stop you right there, Jason. I don't even know if Che knows. I don't know if Che knows what you just did.
He may not. He may have gone right past.
He may not.
It may have been zoomed right past.
You're quoting Sean Carter from the Blueprint 3. You're implying that Jay-Z's admonition to lesser MCs is the way that Biden is backhanding Trump and saying we're not in the same bracket. We don't shoot at the same baskets. I just want to make sure that Che knows what you're saying. Go ahead, Jason.
That's good. Always, of course. And the idea is, like, if he accomplishes this, I mean, this again, it will be the blueprint for rebuilding America. But what we saw with Obama and what we might see with Republicans and Joe Biden this time, I remember I was living in Ohio during the last big stimulus in the northern part of the state where you had Democratic representatives. They redid Highway 90. It was huge. It went through Cleveland. But the busiest bridge in America is actually Highway 75. It goes all the way from Detroit all the way down to Atlanta, right there in Cincinnati. And they couldn't get substantive changes because Republicans in that part of the state didn't really want stimulus money. So it's going to be a real challenge for Biden. But if he can knock it out, he'll be the man politically, not just for this administration, but for administrations to follow.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, Biden has never been known historically as being a cagey political operator. But what you saw in Pittsburgh was, quite frankly, a master class in throwing shade at a political opponent. The Trump infrastructure weeks, which you just detailed, I mean, they were farces. It was a running gag. Late night comedians made fun of them. He always flailed around and lost the thread of this. And this is despite the fact that for the first 2 years, he had the entire Congress, the House and the Senate. He had a Secretary of Transportation who is the wife of the then Senate Majority Leader, now the Senate Minority Leader. And he himself, Donald Trump, or played, at least on TV, a billionaire genius real estate developer. I mean, if anything was ready-made for Donald Trump, it was this. And he never succeeded. He always failed at it. And this is like opposite day. Guess what? We have an actual president who has put forward a plan. It's paid for. It's well thought out. It actually has a real chance of being passed in some form or other. It is extremely popular with not just voters, but also Republican voters. Now, that doesn't mean anything because Republican elected officials are on a very different page when it comes to infrastructure or any kind of domestic spending, period.
Yeah, I mean, you both lay out why this is a bold and potentially sweeping move for the new president. Seeing him, Che, appeal to not only past presidents in history, but really progressive heroes is interesting because I feel like we're continuing to watch. I'm not even calling it Biden 2.0. Maybe it's Biden 3.0. When I worked in the Senate, he was well known as a moderate, centrist kind of senator. Now he's saying, hey, I'm the new FDR, deal with it. And so we like to look back here and steep ourselves a little bit in the history. Che, take a listen to who he's trying to measure up against FDR.
Startling industrial changes has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 million of our citizens.
Che, walk us through what's important to understand when people say something's too big or we can't afford it, because that's what they said to FDR. Some at Wall Street and elsewhere saw him as a, quote, radical. The things he did to make life slightly more secure and fair have become mainstream, Che.
They did. They have. I mean, you know, George Will famously said that the American people are conservative, i.e. they want to conserve the New Deal. And that's a fact. Americans do like infrastructure spending. They do like programs that provide them with a social safety net. And there, by the way, is one progressive hero that people kind of forget who was a great champion of infrastructure. It was a Republican president, Eisenhower. Eisenhower was known in his lifetime as the father of America's highways. He built the interstate highway system. There was a time when Republicans were really on top of these sorts of infrastructure projects. They understood that this was not just, you know, spending that you're never going to see any return from. They understood this was good for business. It's good for a business that you can get in a car, perhaps an electric vehicle, and go to a business and do business. That is very, very good for commerce, for business, for the economy. That's something Republicans used to understand. Now the only thing they think is good for business and the only thing they really sort of care about are tax cuts for the rich, which is really why, despite Republican support for this infrastructure plan, I would be very doubtful if you see a single Republican vote for it.
Jason?
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. They're going to resist this just on principle because a Democrat came up with the idea. but it is really functionally the only thing we can do. And to add something, part of what Eisenhower was able to do, why he was able to be sort of the father of American highways, is because he made it a national security issue. He said, look, we've got to have highways throughout this country in case we're bombed, in case we're attacked. We've got to be able to move supplies and resources. If Joe Biden can continue to be on this theme of like, hey, we're fighting this war, we're winning this war against COVID, he might be able to get some local members of Congress, no one in the Senate, but he might get some Republican Congress people to actually go along with this. Look, infrastructure has long been overdue in this country. We see bridge collapses all the time. We see difficulties with roads. But what he also might be able to sell people on is wireless and getting Wi-Fi into rural parts of the country and giving those sorts of things to people who desperately need them in order to farm, in order to work, in order to be in rural areas.
Well, and Jason, was it not Meek Mill who said, Jay, I just have to finish this briefly because it's Jason, talk is cheap, free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly.
He said that.
Biden knows what he's doing.
He did say that.
He knows how to put this together.
We're running over on time. Che gets the last word.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on Jason's point, one important component of national defense that this plan addresses is climate change. That is an increasing area that we do need to defend against and prepare for, and that's something Joe Biden does. Another thing he does is make sure and ensure racial equity as an important component of this plan.
Well, I want to say to Jason Blueprint Johnson and to Che, PhD history, Komanduri, we're both rich. Yeah, and the blue. Hey, you're right. You know what? And it's kismet, as we say. Jason, Che, thank you very much.
Exactly.